My husband confessed at dinner he never loved me. What I revealed next ended his career and his marriage. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit. And one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I prefer mine at exactly 98. 6 degrees body temperature. The temperature of blood when it's still warm, when betrayal is still fresh on someone's lips, when they're still drunk on their own arrogance. Tonight, I'm serving the main course. The table is set perfectly at Le Bernardin, our usual anniversary spot. 22 years of coming here, and David still orders the same thing. The tasting menu with wine pairings, because he likes to pretend he has refined tastes. The irony isn't lost on me. The man who's been feeding me lies for the better part of a decade, sitting across from me in a restaurant known for its honesty fresh ingredients. No pretense, just excellence. I watch him now, cutting his Dover sole with surgical precision, and I think about how fitting it is that he's eating something that lived its life flat on the ocean floor, both eyes on one side of its head. Some might call that evolution. I call it an adaptation to being a bottom feeder. "You're quiet tonight," he says, not looking up from his plate. His voice carries that particular tone, the one he uses when he's about to deliver what he thinks is a knockout punch. I've learned to recognize it over the years, the way a sailor learns to read storm clouds. I take a sip of the Chablis. It's crisp, clean, with just a hint of mineral undertone. Like truth, I suppose. Just thinking. About what? I could tell him about the private investigator's report. Sitting in my Hermes bag, the one with photographs of him and his assistant Jessica, in various compromising positions across half the boutique hotels in Manhattan. I could mention the financial records I've been copying for 8 months, documenting his systematic embezzlement from his own clients' trust funds. I could bring up the burner phone I found in his gym bag, the one with text messages that would make a mob lawyer blush. Instead, I smile. About us. He finally looks up then, and I see something flicker across his face. Relief? Anticipation? It's hard to tell with David. His expressions have become as manufactured as his affection. "Funny you should mention that," he says, setting down his fork with the careful deliberation of a man who's rehearsed this moment. "I've been thinking about us too. Here it comes. I can feel it building like pressure before a storm. The air in the restaurant seems to thicken, even though the conversations at other tables continue their gentle murmur. A woman at the table next to us laughs at something her companion says. A real laugh, bright and unguarded. I remember laughing like that once. It was 1995 when I first met David. I was 28, a junior partner at Morrison Associates, working 100-hour weeks and surviving on coffee and ambition. He was the golden boy of Manhattan finance, 6'2" with those Paul Newman eyes and a smile that could charm money out of a Swiss bank account. Our first date was at Windows on the World. He ordered champagne without looking at the price, talked about art and literature with the casual confidence of a man who'd never been told he was wrong about anything. He quoted Yeats while the city spread out below us like a circuit board of dreams and possibilities. "I will arise and go now," and go to Innisfree," he said, his hand covering mine across the table. "And a small cabin built there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honeybee," I continued, and his eyes lit up with genuine surprise and delight. "You know Yeats. I have a master's in English literature from Columbia. Poetry was my first language before I learned to speak law." He leaned back, studying me like I was a painting he was considering for purchase. Beautiful and brilliant, dangerous combination. I should have paid more attention to the way he said dangerous. Not like it was an attractive quality, but like it was something that needed to be managed, contained. But I was 28 and drunk on champagne and possibility. And when he kissed me in the elevator, down from the 107th floor, I thought I was falling in love. What I was actually doing was falling into a very elegant trap. The courtship was textbook David expensive, showy, and ultimately hollow. Weekend trips to the Hamptons in his Porsche, front row seats to Broadway shows, dinners at restaurants where the waiters knew his name and his preferred table. He proposed at the Met in front of the Monet water lilies because he said I was his masterpiece. I said yes because I was young enough to mistake possession for passion, control for care. The wedding was everything David wanted. 300 guests, a reception at the plaza, my dress custom made by Vera Wang. I was too busy playing the perfect bride to notice that none of my law school friends were at the bridal party. David had suggested so diplomatically that his sister's friends would be more appropriate for the photos. More attractive, he meant. More decorative. The first crack in the facade came on our honeymoon in Tuscany. We were having dinner at a small trattoria in San Gimignano, and I mentioned wanting to take a sabbatical to write a novel, something I'd dreamed about since college. David's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "A novel? Sweetheart, you're a lawyer, a very good one. Why would you want to waste time on something so uncertain?" "It's not a waste. It's something I've always wanted to do." "But you're married now. We have plans. The house in Greenwich, children eventually. You can't just abandon your career for some fantasy." The way he said fantasy, like my dreams were childish delusions that needed to be put away with other adolescent things, should have been my first warning. Instead, I filed it away, the way women do with these small cruelties, telling myself it was just practical concern. The novel never got written, the sabbatical never happened, and somewhere in the space between his concern and my compliance, I began to disappear. It wasn't dramatic. There was no moment of sudden realization, no catching him in bed with his secretary. It was more like erosion, the slow, steady wearing away of everything I thought I knew about the man I'd married. First, it was the little lies. Coming home late. From client dinners with the smell of perfume that wasn't mine lingering on his collar. Business trips that stretched longer than necessary. Conference calls that happened behind closed doors with voices that were distinctly feminine and definitely not discussing quarterly reports. Then came the financial irregularities. Joint accounts that would have unexpected withdrawals. Credit card charges for hotels and restaurants in cities where David supposedly had no business. When I asked about them, he had explanations that were just plausible enough to avoid an argument client entertainment, last-minute business trips, investment opportunities that required immediate cash. The thing about being married to a liar is that you develop a sixth sense for dishonesty. It's like living with a gas leak. You don't notice it at first, But eventually, the smell becomes unmistakable. You just have to decide whether you're going to light a match or call the gas company. I chose option 3. I became a detective. It started small, checking his phone when he was in the shower, noting the names and numbers that appeared most frequently, following up on his supposed business meetings by calling the companies directly, posing as his assistant, confirming appointments that surprisingly often didn't exist. Jennifer Morrison, remember that name, was the first affair I confirmed. A paralegal at Brookstone Associates, 24 years old, with the kind of blonde ambition that David has always found irresistible. The affair lasted 8 months. I tracked every dinner, every hotel stay, every lie he told to cover his tracks. And I document everything. Sarah Chen was next, a marketing executive at Goldman Sachs. That one lasted almost a year. Then came Rebecca Walsh, a journalist at Forbes who should have known better than to get involved with a married financial advisor, but apparently found David's insider information more compelling than her professional ethics. By the time Jessica Martinez entered the picture, his current assistant and latest conquest, I had become a forensic accountant of infidelity. I could track David's affairs like a meteorologist tracking storm patterns. The signs were always the same. Longer hours at the office, sudden improvements in his grooming habits, mysterious text messages, and that particular kind of distraction that comes from managing multiple lies simultaneously. But the affairs were just the appetizer. The main course was David's systematic theft from his clients' trust accounts. I discovered it by accident, or what David would call accident. I prefer to think of it as intuition, finally catching up with evidence. I was looking for our tax documents in his home office when I found a folder labeled Discretionary Investments. A folder that, according to David, didn't exist. Inside were bank statements for accounts I'd never seen before. Investment records for transactions I'd never heard of. And correspondence with offshore banks that specialized in the kind of financial privacy that legitimate businessmen don't usually require. David had been skimming from his clients' portfolios for years. Not large amounts. He was too smart for that. But consistent amounts, systematically diverted into accounts that he controlled exclusively. Conservative estimates put the theft at somewhere north of 2 million. The beauty of his system was its sophistication. He would move money from conservative investments into higher risk opportunities, then show his clients the modest returns from the conservative portfolio while pocketing the difference from the high-risk gains. When the high-risk investments failed, which they did, frequently, he would cover the losses by skimming from other clients' accounts. It was a shell game played with other people's retirement funds, college savings, and trust accounts. And David was very, very good at it. Almost as good as I became at tracking it. The private investigator, Marcus Webb, a former FBI forensic accountant turned private contractor, was expensive, but worth every penny. For $500 a day plus expenses, he could track financial irregularities that would make the SEC weep with joy. More importantly, he could do it without leaving digital footprints that would alert David to my investigation. Marcus also handled the surveillance photography. Turns out David and Jessica had been using the Mandarin Oriental for their afternoon encounters. Always the same suite. Always paid for with cash that came from one of David's discretionary accounts. The irony of him stealing money to fund his adultery wasn't lost on me. The photographs were remarkably explicit. Jessica apparently had a taste for role-playing, and David was happy to oblige. The images were date-stamped and cross-referenced with David's supposed client meetings, creating a timeline of deception that would be admissible in both criminal and civil court. But I wasn't ready to play that hand yet. Instead, I began my own financial preparations, quietly, systematically, and with the same attention to detail that David used in his embezzlement scheme. First, I transferred our joint savings into accounts that only I controlled, not all of it that would have tipped him off, but enough to ensure that I wouldn't be financially vulnerable when the inevitable divorce proceedings began. Then I began converting assets. The jewelry he'd given me over the years, the anniversary diamonds, the birthday pearls, the guilt-induced emeralds that appeared after particularly long business trips. All of it went to a discreet jewelry buyer in the Diamond District who specialized in quick, quiet transactions. The art collection was next. David prided himself on his taste in contemporary art, though I suspected most of his acquisitions were based on investment potential rather than aesthetic appreciation. The Basquiat sketch in his study, the Warhol prints in the dining room, the small but significant Picasso drawing in our bedroom, all of them were appraised, documented, and quietly removed during David's business trips. He never noticed. The man who could track fractional percentage points in investment returns couldn't be bothered to notice that his own living room was being systematically emptied of anything valuable. I also began making copies of everything: financial records, correspondence, contracts, tax returns, anything that might be relevant in either criminal or divorce proceedings. Marcus taught me how to use encrypted drives and secure cloud storage, how to create digital paper trails that couldn't be traced back to me. By the time David started his affair with Jessica, I had created a comprehensive dossier of his criminal and personal misconduct that would have impressed J. Edgar Hoover. I was ready for war. I just needed him to fire the first shot. "Catherine, are you listening to me?" David's voice pulls me back to the present. He's leaning forward slightly, his eyes bright with the kind of anticipation that means he's about to deliver what he thinks will be devastating news. "Of course," I lie smoothly. "You were saying?" "I was saying that I think it's time we talked honestly about our marriage." The word honestly coming from David's mouth is like watching a vampire complain about the taste of garlic. But I nod encouragingly, as if I'm not already 3 steps ahead of whatever script he's rehearsing. 22 years is a long time," he continues. "We've both changed. We want different things now." I take another sip of wine. "What do you want, David?" He shifts in his chair, and I can see him calculating his approach. David has always been a strategist, whether he's manipulating stock prices or manipulating me. The difference is that stocks don't usually fight back. "I want us both to be happy," he says, deploying his most sincere expression. "And I don't think we can be happy together anymore." "Why is that?" "Because..." He pauses as if the words are difficult for him. They're not. He's practiced this speech. "Because I'm not in love with you anymore, Catherine. I don't think I have been for a long time." There it is. The first shot. The words hang in the air between us like smoke from a discharged weapon. At the table next to us, the woman who was laughing earlier has gone quiet. Her conversation with her companion dropped to a whisper. I wonder if she heard David's declaration, if she's now looking at us with the kind of morbid fascination that people reserve for car accidents and public breakdowns. David is watching me carefully, waiting for my reaction. He expects tears, probably pleading, maybe anger or hysteria. What he doesn't expect is for me to nod thoughtfully and ask, "When did you realize that?" He blinks, momentarily thrown off script. "When? What do you mean? When did you realize you weren't in love with me? Was it before or after you started embezzling money from your clients' trust funds?" The color drains from his face so quickly that I wonder if he might actually pass out. His mouth opens and closes soundlessly, like a fish that suddenly found itself out of water. "I don't know what you're talking about," he manages finally. "No, let me be more specific." I reach into my purse and withdraw a manila folder. Not the complete dossier, just a taste. "Was it before or after you started stealing from the Hendersons' retirement fund to pay for hotel rooms where you could fuck your assistant?" David's eyes dart around the restaurant, checking to see if anyone has overheard. The woman at the next table definitely heard. She's now staring openly, her dinner forgotten. "Catherine, lower your voice. People are what, David? Listening? Good. Maybe they should hear this." I open the folder and pull out a photograph. It's one of Marcus's better shots. David and Jessica in the Mandarin Oriental engaged in an activity that would definitely violate the hotel's terms of service. "This was taken on March 15th, I say conversationally, as if I'm discussing the weather. "The same day you told me you were having dinner with potential investors from Hong Kong. Funny thing about that dinner, when I called the Mandarin Oriental to confirm your reservation, they told me that only David Morrison in their system that day was registered to room 3247, along with the Jessica Martinez." David's face has gone from pale to grey. He's gripping his wine glass so tightly that I'm genuinely concerned he might shatter it. "How long have you known?" he whispers. "About Jessica? 6 months. About the money? 8 months. About your previous affairs?" I pretend to consider. "Well, let's see. Jennifer Morrison, who, by the way, shares a surname with my law firm, which made the investigation particularly amusing. Sarah Chen, Rebecca Walsh. Should I continue?" "Catherine, but you want to know the really interesting part." I pull out another document. This one showing bank transfers and account numbers. I've been documenting everything. Every stolen dollar. Every lie. Every hotel receipt paid for with money you embezzled from people who trusted you with their life savings. David's hand is shaking now. Actual trembling. I find it oddly satisfying. "The Petersons' daughter's college fund," I continue, consulting my notes. "You've stolen 47,000 from that account alone. The widow Mrs. Chen. And yes, that's Sarah's mother, which adds a particularly nasty dimension to your affair with her daughter. You've taken 23,000 from her portfolio. Should I go on?" "What do you want?" he asks, and his voice is barely audible. "What do I want?" I lean back in my chair, enjoying this moment more than I probably should. I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. I pull out my phone and show him the screen. It's open to an email that's already been sent. 43 minutes ago, I sent a complete copy of my investigation to the SEC, the FBI, and the District Attorney's Office. The evidence includes financial records showing systematic embezzlement totaling 2 million photographic evidence of your affairs, and recorded phone conversations between you and Jessica discussing how to hide money in offshore accounts. David's wine glass hits the table with enough force to splash shabbily across the white tablecloth. "You're lying. I also sent copies to the partners at Morrison Associates, my law firm, in case you've forgotten, along with my formal representation agreement for divorce proceedings. As of this morning, I am officially represented by the best divorce attorney in New York. I flip to the next page in my folder. Additionally, I've filed for immediate asset freezing on all accounts associated with your business. Your personal accounts, your business accounts, and those interesting offshore investments you thought I didn't know about. As of 4 p.m. today, you have approximately $847 in readily available funds. That's what was in your wallet the last time I checked. David is staring at me like I'm speaking a foreign language. Oh, and I called Jessica's husband. Did you know she was married? His name is Miguel, and he's a very nice man who works construction in Queens. He was extremely interested to learn about his wife's extracurricular activities. I believe he's planning to surprise her at your office tomorrow morning. Catherine, you can't... This is insane. You're destroying both our lives. No, David. I'm destroying your life. Mine is just beginning. I close the folder and return it to my purse. You see, while you were busy stealing money and fucking your assistant, I was learning things. I learned that I'm an excellent investigator. I learned that I have a talent for financial forensics. I learned that I'm much stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. I signal the waiter for the check. I also learned that Morrison Associates is looking for a new partner to head their white-collar criminal defense division. Turns out that successfully exposing and prosecuting financial fraud is excellent preparation for defending against it. They offered me the position this morning. The salary is $350,000 plus bonuses. David's mouth is still hanging open. As for our marriage, you're absolutely right that it's over. The divorce papers will be served tomorrow morning, along with the criminal indictments. I'm keeping the house in Greenwich, the apartment in the city, and half of whatever assets the government doesn't seize as proceeds from your criminal enterprise. I stand up, leaving David sitting at the table, like a man who's just watched his entire world collapse in real time. Oh, and David, that novel I wanted to write 20 years ago. I've decided to write it after all. It's going to be about a woman who discovers her husband is a lying, cheating criminal and decides to destroy him systematically and completely. I think it's going to be a bestseller. I lean down so that only he can hear my next words. You said I was dangerous when we first met. You should have listened to yourself. The walk to the restaurant's exit feels like a victory lap. Other diners are staring, some openly, some pretending not to, but I don't care. Let them stare. Let them witness what happens when a woman finally decides to stop playing victim and start playing chess. Outside, the October air is crisp and clean, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and new possibilities. I hail a taxi, and as we pull away from Le Bernardin, I see David through the restaurant window, still sitting at our table, staring at the spot where I was sitting like he can't quite believe what just happened. My phone buzzes with a text from Marcus Webb. FBI wants to meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. They're very interested in your evidence. Also, the Times wants an interview about the case. You're going to be famous. Famous. After 22 years of being David Morrison's wife, I'm finally going to be Catherine Morrison, the woman who brought down one of Manhattan's most respected financial advisors. The taxi driver catches my eye in the rearview mirror. Good evening, Mom. I think about David, sitting alone in that restaurant, probably still trying to process the fact that his life as he knew it ended over dessert. I think about Jessica, who will wake up tomorrow to find her marriage destroyed and her career in ruins. I think about all the money David stole and all the lives he damaged and all the lies he told, and then I smile. Actually, I tell the driver, it's been a perfect evening. The city rushes past the taxi window in a blur of lights and possibilities. Somewhere behind us, David is probably calling his lawyer, trying to figure out how to contain the damage from what just hit him. But containment is no longer an option. The explosion has already happened. All that's left now is to count the bodies and assess the rubble. My phone rings. It's my sister Ellen, calling from California. Catherine? I just saw the strangest thing on Twitter. Something about David being arrested for embezzlement. Please tell me this is some kind of mistake. I settle back in the taxi seat and watch Manhattan stream past the window. Actually, Ellen, let me tell you a story. It starts with a woman who thought she was married to a prince, and it ends with her discovering she was actually married to a frog. But unlike the fairy tale, this time the frog doesn't get kissed. He gets served with federal indictments. As I begin to tell my sister about the last 3 years of my life, the investigation, the evidence gathering, the careful planning that led to tonight's confrontation, I realize that David was wrong about one thing. I did write a novel after all. I just wrote it with my life instead of words on a page. And tonight, I finally got to write the end. The taxi turns onto my street, and I can see the lights in my house. My house now, not our house. Tomorrow morning, David will wake up in a hotel room, assuming he can find one that will accept what's left of his credit. He'll call lawyers who won't return his calls, friends who will suddenly be too busy to meet for lunch, business associates who will claim they never really knew him that well. But tonight, I'm going home to a bottle of champagne I've been saving for a special occasion. A bath drawn with water that's exactly the temperature I prefer. And a future that's entirely my own. They say the best revenge is living well. But I've discovered something better. The best revenge is living free. I pay the taxi driver and walk up the path to my front door, my heels clicking against the stones with a sound like applause. Behind me, somewhere in the city, David Morrison is having the worst night of his life. And I have never been happier.